Okay, we'll call to order the meeting, Monday, March 28, 2022, premise of a special select board meeting. So we're here for the matter. I just want to, hi guys, I just want to make sure you guys want to open session for this meeting, for this hearing. Okay, thank you. So with that being said, I want to make a motion at that point. Yeah, so if I could get a motion to appoint appeal hearing officer designee John Fresh. Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you, Jonathan. So, hi, my name is John Klesch. I'm a lawyer from the firm Stitzel, Page and Fletcher. The select board's asked me to assist it and represent it with this personnel hearing that we're here for tonight. My understanding is we're here for an appeal of a discipline that's been given from the town manager to the DPW director, Mr. Mashner, who's here with his lawyer, Richard Carroll. The town manager is represented by counsel Karen Stackpole, who's appearing remotely. And I'm just going to briefly describe what the process will be, and then we'll get going. Both parties can have a chance to make an opening statement if they wish through the attorneys. Then the town manager, with the assistance of counsel, will put on evidence about the matter that led to the disciplinary action. The employee's representative, Attorney Carroll, will get a chance to cross-examine, ask questions. We'll swear in anybody who's going to testify. So, for example, Carrie Johnson will swear her in before she starts testifying. The select board may have questions for the witnesses. What we usually do is let the attorneys exhaust whatever questions they may have, so they may go back and forth, more than once. But once they're all through, if I don't remember, remind me that you all can ask questions of the witness as well. Then once the town manager is done presenting whatever case and information she wishes to present, it'll be employee's turn. So Mr. Mashter, through your attorney, can present, same thing, testimony, witnesses, and so on. Again, then Attorney Stackpole can cross-examine whoever testifies from that side. Once again, the select board can ask questions if it likes. Have a chance for closing statements at the end. Again, if the representatives want to say something, if they want to let the individual make a statement, they can do that. Once we've gotten through all of that, the hearing will be closed. The select board meetings, the special meetings, the only thing on the agenda. The select board meeting will be adjourned. The select board can deliberate and think about what decision it's going to make on this outside of the open meeting law process, because it's a quasi-judicial proceeding. So the board can, they may get together, but it's not a meeting under the statute. They'll get together and talk and decide what kind of a decision they're going to make, and that'll be issued under the personal policy. Does either Karen, Terry, or Richard and Mr. Mashter have any questions?
John, I have a question. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have a question specifically with regard to the order. I don't think there's anything in the town policies that suggests that this is a situation where the town has the burden of proof. This is not a situation where you have a bargaining unit agreement. This is a situation where you have a policy manual on the town, where the town has the ability and its sole discretion to discipline employees based on certain behaviors. I'll direct your attention specifically to page 10. This is a scenario where insubordination certainly is one of the issues here, as is lack of candor, and those two things are itemized in that particular on that particular page. And so I don't have any problem with us going first, but I don't know if you've made any determination as a matter of law about burden of proof, but I would suggest to you that the burden of proof is actually on the employee and not on the town, because the town has the discretion to manage its employees, and there's nothing in the policies that suggests that they have the burden of proving, so I would suggest that the employee has it. Thank you.
Would you like to respond?
I will respond, assuming that Alan has appeal rights to the select board. I leave it to you, but I would suggest this should be a de novo appeal, in which case the town would have the burden to establish that his conduct was so contrary to the disciplinary rules and the town procedures that it merits some kind of disciplinary action.
Well, I don't think we're going to announce any position at this time on these issues, other than to observe that the personnel policy in section 28, second to last paragraph, where it talks about the process for this hearing, states that at the post-termination hearing, the employee will be afforded the opportunity to address the basis for termination by hearing and examining the evidence presented against the employee, cross-examining witnesses and presenting evidence on his or her behalf. So I believe procedurally, what's entailed here is that the case in favor of discipline from management's perspective ought to be put on first. Regardless of whether, to your point, regardless of whether there actually is or is not a burden of proof. So I think we can get through the hearing based on looking at that appears to me to be what the process calls for, and worry about those legal questions after.
Yeah. And just to be clear, this isn't a termination. This is a suspension. It was a 1-week suspension that was provided to this employee, but there could have been a choice of termination, but there was not. It was specifically as an unpaid suspension. Thank you.
That's a fair point. Let me just quickly say, right, I wasn't meaning to suggest there was a termination here. Section 28 of the policy is entitled Suspension and Termination Appeal Procedure. I realize that throughout the body of the section, it doesn't talk about the word suspension, but the assessment at this time is that for this suspension, which is under appeal, we're going to observe the same processes as are spelled out explicitly for termination. So that's the rationale for the procedure of going in this order, with the town manager's case being presented first.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. So any other preliminary things before we get underway?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay, so go ahead, Karen, and
Sure. Thank you very much. I want to thank the council for the select board for hearing this and for taking my part in this remotely. I appreciate it very much. I have actually a labor matter at 8:30 tonight here in Burlington, so I apologize for not being there in person. Let me say first that this is, I think, a situation, just briefly as an opener, this is a situation where you do have a fairly long-term employee, and this person has we acknowledge that this person has generally received good evaluations through the course of his employment, but there have been situations in the last year or so, a little bit more than that, where this individual has not followed the direction as given by the town manager. And there have been very specific directions provided to this person as to functions of his work. Number one, specific instructions not to take donations anymore, because those were creating some problems in terms of storage and liability and things like that. And after that instruction was given, some specific equipment actually that was exercise equipment, was donated and accepted by this individual, and then was actually installed in the town's in one of the town's garages for use by employees, which again created liability issues and without any consultation and in direct contravention to orders that had been previously provided to him by his supervisor. This is also a situation where there is an employee who, in explaining away some of the problems that have been addressed with him, has lacked candor. And our witness will talk about specific issues of that. But we believe that the process was well followed here, as the town manager was considering serious discipline. She was very measured in how she approached that. She considered all forms of discipline. She did consider termination, and yet was very specific about a 1 week suspension. She did provide an opportunity for the employee to have notice of what the issues were. She issued a letter, which we'll put into evidence. She met with him. She heard what he had to say. She received evidence from him. She considered it carefully and then determined that the 1 week suspension was the appropriate level of discipline for his actions. And so with that, I think we will, and we request obviously that her actions be sustained because we think they are reasonable and well within her authority at this particular point. With that, I think we will get started, and I would ask that Carrie be sworn if you're swearing people in.
Yes, we will. First, let me ask whether
Sure.
Attorney Richard Carroll wants to make a brief statement.
Well, I'll just make a brief statement. Appreciate the chance to let Alan tell his side of this series of events. Alan is probably certainly guilty, at which he would admit, of excessive enthusiasm trying to carry out the responsibilities and job duties. But he has been receptive to feedback both from the board in the past and from his direct supervisor. But the suggestion that his conduct involved a lack of candor or insubordination, I just don't think is substantiated. Alan's going to testify about these 3 different events that he was written up for and give his explanation and time frame for each of those. So that's all we have to say.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, let's begin with the case of the town manager. And so yes, we will swear in the witness. Harry Johnson, would you please raise your hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Karen Stackpole, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Carrie, if you could just state your name for the record, not that they don't know who you are.
Harry Johnson,
Okay. And the position that you hold with the town, please.
the town manager.
Okay. And in that capacity, do you supervise Mr. Mashter?
I do.
He directly reports to you, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And do you provide him with evaluations, performance evaluations?
I do.
And how often do you provide him with performance evaluations?
Annually.
Okay. And directing your attention, and John, this is where I'll just use Bates numbers if that makes it easier. Carrie, I'm going to direct your attention to an evaluation that you did June of 2020 for Mr. Mashter, and it starts on town 21 and goes to 22.
I think that's June of 21 though, correct?
Sorry, June 2020 is I think what it says. Oh, sorry, 21, you are correct. I apologize. The last one on there was June 21, sorry, 20, I was reading that. Do you have it in front of you?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
And so there were, you obviously gave him reasonable grades here. Am I correct that average is 3?
That's correct. Yes.
And so there were several situations where you gave him above average, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And in cooperation, I note that you gave him average. Why did you give him average in cooperation?
I mean, at that point, I was concerned that Alan was putting too much on his plate as well as some of the other employees. And I didn't want any new programs or activities or installations in any of our facilities. In other words, no new programs. Let's try to handle what we have. Couple falls, it got very, very busy, almost hard to keep up with.
Okay, and I noticed that under job performance, you also gave him just an average rating. Can you speak to that, please?
Similar reasons. I mean, I wanted to curb some of the enthusiasm regarding new projects that had been installed without permits, without really thoroughly going over a budget. Initiating projects are great, but in towns it has to move very slowly to go through all the chain of command.
And was there something specific that went on in terms of a project that went over budget or didn't have permits that you were referring to in that number 2?
I mean, I know in the summer of 2021, I was concerned that a donation of a greenhouse and a couple other things had happened and I didn't know about it. I'm not sure the town would have, the select board or myself would have supported it if we'd been asked first, but we already had it. We had spent town staff time getting it. I'm not sure if it was overtime or not, but it was a project that I'd heard enough displeasure about that I just wanted to stop it. I think I said something like, let's just focus on what we're doing and doing well, not adding to anything right now. I don't think we need to start our own greenhouse. We're a Department of Public Works. So at that time, I suggested, I did more than suggest, I put it in the evaluation, do not add any new activities.
Okay. And when you put that in an evaluation like that, is that something that you expect as somebody who reports to you that he will follow?
I do, yes.
Okay. And do you believe that he understood the direction that you gave to him?
Yes.
Did he ask you any questions about your evaluation indicating that he did not understand the directions you were giving him?
Not that I recall right now, no. I don't believe there's any follow-up.
Okay. And to your knowledge, is there any writing that he gave to you in follow-up to your evaluation of him dated 7/8/2021?
No, I did not get anything in writing, and I don't believe I got anything orally either, verbally.
Okay. So, and then moving forward from the summer of 2021, did there come a time when you learned in the fall of 2021 that he had not followed your directives with regard to new projects or accepting donations?
Yes, in October, I think I'd heard rumors in September, but in October, a couple of people had come to me with concerns that there was a gym installed at the new DPW, a workout facility next to the mechanics bay. And I had not seen it at that time. I was not aware of it. I was trying to stay out of, with COVID, less frequent visits to each department. So then I became aware of an installation of a gym.
Okay, and did you investigate that to determine whether or not that was true?
I did. Was
Can you tell us?
It was installed, and more importantly, I think I was concerned about liability. So I asked my assistant Jen to find out if our insurance company, our liability carrier, was comfortable with it.
And what was the response?
They were not, and they listed about 4 or 5 bullet points about why they weren't comfortable with it and asked that it be removed.
Okay, and what did you do next once you got that information?
I met with, it was one of the reasons that caused me to consider discipline, and I met with Alan at that time. I don't remember the exact date, but I met with him and asked him a couple other questions, and then including the gym was not allowed, you have to get rid of it. Really wasn't a question, it was a statement.
Okay. And when you spoke to him, was this prior to giving him any discipline? This was when you were just checking it out, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And what did he tell you about why he had accepted it?
I mean, at that time, he said it was free, that he had accepted it before I officially, I think at that time said before I had officially told him not to. Trying to remember what that conversation was. There's a lot of information here. He countered immediately with, well, a lot of companies have gyms at their facilities. And I said, but our insurance company doesn't want us to have it. It doesn't matter if you like it or if I like it. Our insurance company said we can't have it there. So we have to get rid of it.
And to be clear, he had not spoken to you before he had accepted the materials, is that correct?
Right. Regardless of when that happened, I don't recall ever approving that.
So that was a donation of equipment to the town?
It was.
And so he accepted that in direct violation of what you had told him?
What I had told him in the summertime, which was don't expand any services or activities.
And what about accepting donations? When had you directed him not to accept any more donations?
I think I made that, I thought I made it clear in the summer, but I reiterated it in October when I said, no, do not accept even a blade of grass. Like, we can't accept new things. Sometimes free isn't free. I mean, it seems good sometimes at the beginning, but.
And in the evaluation, though, you had indicated that he should refrain from making changes and no additional activities or things like that in the park. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, that was from earlier in the summer, like June.
And it was around that time that you spoke to him about accepting things. Is that correct?
Yes, including the greenhouse and other things. Yes.
Okay. So by the time that he had accepted this equipment, he already had received that direction from you. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, what concerned me also at that time was, I found this out later, when I said, don't accept anything, not a thing, he did not, he was not forthright with the information that he'd already done that there was already gym equipment in the Department of Public Works building. Like, that's the kind of open communication I hope for, is that, all right, maybe I didn't know it. It's obvious by my statements. I don't know there's a gym at the DPW. A follow-up might have been, you're directing me to do this. I already did it. I didn't know until somebody complained, at that time, that there actually was a gym in the Department of Public Works garage.
Okay. So in terms of this October memo outlining this conversation, you did not discipline him at that time. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, but you did provide him with a clear directive. Is that correct?
I did.
Subsequent to that time, what issues came to your attention that concerned you about Mr. Mashtier's activities?
I mean, the reason that I had initiated conversations with yourself in the fall was an installation of
So
the.
let's stop right there.
Okay.
Let's not talk about what you and I talked about, because that's
Okay.
attorney-client privilege, but just talk about what you might have, what prompted you to take further action in the future.
Getting numerous phone calls about an installation of road delineators on one of our roads, and getting calls from taxpayers and select board members that something seemed unsafe, and that there'd been a comment from Jim Coda, our local V-Trans engineer, that this was an unsafe situation. Unfortunately, that morning, Mr. Mass Chair was on vacation, so I took the lead on the complaints and the remedy. Jim had put on social media that he considered a liability. So I felt like he had called us out on it. And if I didn't take action and someone had gotten hurt, we would have been liable for any action. So I asked our Department of Public Works to remove that installation that morning. My concern at that time was I didn't know that it had been installed that day. So I would be warned ahead of time that people might be unhappy about it. Sometimes we have to do things people aren't happy about. I'm fine with that. I just would like to be warned about it ahead of time. And that the public hadn't been notified, and so I couldn't notify the select board. So we all just kind of felt uninformed at that point.
Okay, and did you bring that particular situation to Mr. Mass Chair's attention?
I did, and I, after talking with him about it, put a memo in his personnel folder.
Okay, and from there, what was the next action that caused you to have some concern?
After October,
Yes.
basically, in March, I had, February actually, I was asked to answer some questions and answer questions about situations I had no knowledge of, like the salt barter agreement. I was not aware of it. I heard two different people ask me why we were in the business of selling salt. I really did not know about the Ryan Jordan arrangement. I asked Alan to explain that because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why I was getting so many questions about it. And I just flatly said, do we sell salt? He said, no. And then he left.
And what was the time frame on this?
That was in February,
Okay.
I believe mid-February.
Okay, and did you investigate some of that? Actually, let me direct your attention. I'm going to direct your attention to town 24 and 25 and 26. Is town 24, can you tell us what that document is, please?
That's a document where I put in writing that I had some questions about a number of things, and I documented the 5 things I was concerned about, tried to summarize them in a memo to Alan.
Okay, and these were things that had come up between October and March, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and in one of these you mentioned a lack of him being candid. It's the last bullet. Finally, you have not been candid with me about some of the above actions. And you're expected to be trustworthy and are expected to act in the best interest of the town. Tell me in what ways, what prompted you to write this particular part of it?
There was a couple, but the most prominent is the salt barter issue. I mean, that conversation was as succinct as I recall. And then a couple weeks later, I said, I'm going to call Ryan Jordan. I don't understand why these rumors persist. Somebody keeps asking me about them. What really happened? If I call Ryan Jordan, what is he going to tell me? And he goes, that I gave him a bucket of salt in return for work at the town Bay Park. So what I meant by the lack of candor is, I mean, when you supervisor asked you to explain a situation, are we selling salt? I would have appreciated knowing that at that first conversation. I felt like the secondary conversation was maybe not fabricated, but I don't understand why I didn't get it the first time I asked the question. It seemed like there was something there that wasn't truthful, and maybe and I'll just leave it at that, but that's what I meant. Like, I asked, the answer was no. I don't know what was going through his mind, but the answer at that time had been no.
And when you say a barter, just so that everybody in the room can understand that, what actually happened in this salt barter situation?
My understanding now is that he couldn't find, Ryan Jordan couldn't find salt anywhere and had asked Alan if he could get a bucket. And then in return, Alan said, well, if I do that for you, then you're going to perform some services for the town that we will need that are valued at least equal to the amount of the salt. That's why I don't think that those services have been done yet, but they're supposed to be done. So the barter assert like materials in exchange for services.
And is that kind of a barter arrangement that he agreed to consistent with your prior directions of him or to him? About accepting things and that sort of thing, not taking on new work, that kind of thing?
I mean, I don't think I don't think I was extremely clear on that day that you shall not barter at any time in the future, not in February when I spoke to him, but we have subsequently created a policy that prohibits bartering.
Okay. And with regard to the second bullet point on this document 24, first and second, you talk about the fact that he went against a clear direction of yours, and that relates to the gym equipment, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I note on here, if you look at 25 and 26, can you tell us what these documents are?
I had asked Alan to respond to a few questions and asked for it to be in writing, and this is his response to my questions. Some of which, most of which I couldn't answer at the time, so I asked him to respond to them.
Okay. And with regard to, so it was essentially part of your investigation, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And did you independently verify any of the facts that he wrote in here?
I did.
And were any of the facts that he asserted not accurate?
What Bates number document are you looking at this time?
25.
25, 26.
Well, I believe the handling of the sale of that truck is a little different than is indicated here. I mean, when I asked the initial question, the answer was I did it the same that I did it before, and Jen helped, my assistant. But what I had done first was, and frankly, in hopes of finding confirmation, was that the truck sale that was done in 2020 for also a plow truck hadn't been done the same. That ad from 2020 includes a plow, it includes the type of plow. And once the bidding was done, I received a formal summary of bids that told me who bid what. Obviously, in this current sale, there was only one bid, but so I was concerned. I'm like, why wasn't this done the same? A plow was mentioned. Somebody had complained that we didn't include the type of engine, whether it was gas or diesel. That had not been mentioned in 2020, nor had it been mentioned in 2021. But my concern is we're selling a plow truck, and I think the plow alone would probably be worth more than the price paid on for the rest of the truck. But at this point, that caused me to continue the investigation, I guess, to check.
And was your concern that the town wasn't receiving enough value for the town equipment that was being sold?
Yes, and that's basically the complaint I got from a number of different people who wanted to let me know that. I guess I'll leave it.
Okay, and so you determined that complaint was founded, is that correct?
Yes, I think we could have gotten more should the word plow truck and a description of the plow truck had been included. I think we would have gotten more bids than one bid.
Okay.
And we also subsequently created a new policy for that as well, so that there's no appearance of any improprieties that we're going to have someone else open the bids.
Okay. And identifying documents, am I correct that you considered the information that was provided. And the other information that was provided by Mr. Mashtier was on documents town 33 through town 45, is that correct?
Town 33. Some of your numbers are sorry, aren't coming through very well on here.
Yep, 33 to 45. My
I'm not-
question is, are those documents that were submitted by Mr. Mashtier to you? for
Oh,
consideration?
okay. 33, they're the ones starting with the highlighter. So I'm sorry, can you restate your question?
Sure. Just trying to figure out for the record, just so that the
One
board
moment,
understands
Karen.
what they're looking at.
I'm sorry, one moment. We're just trying to make sure we're all on the same little page here.
So this is John. So we've got one stack that starts with town 24. Then we've got a stack that starts with town 31, the same document, but the town 31 has the yellow highlighter on the date. And that's what Attorney Stackpole is looking at with you right now.
Correct.
This stack. So going on, Dawn?
I just don't have that second step.
You don't have it at all.
I have the first unhighlighted step.
Yeah, they were sent to you electronically. I'm sorry if you don't have copies sitting right there.
You can have that one. I have two of them.
So it starts with, it says down 33 at the bottom right of the page.
31.
31.
Okay. I think I have one there.
Mine doesn't have it. Okay, so this was, so, yeah, I'm still confused about which documents were those submitted by Mr. Mashtier that were emailed to the chair.
Mhm.
Versus why do we have two copies of the same memo, March 4, 2022?
So
Because-
everything that we submitted to you has town at the front of it. And we submitted basically town 1 through 69. And what we provided to you were documents that were in the town's record, that were either policies or parts of the record of this particular disciplinary course.
Yeah, I know some of those larger numbers I'm not finding in my package either, but the documents that say that were from Mr. Mashtier have the yellow highlighter and do start with the same March 4th memo.
With no Bates number.
It has a Bates number that says town 0031, 00031.
Ours don't.
Yes, so let me just be clear. We included in our pack so that you would have it together, not only the documents that were provided by the town to
Right.
Mr. Mashtier, specifically the March 4th, 2020 letter noticing him that there was a consideration of unpaid suspension, but also the documents starting on 32 and going to basically 44 are his responses too, because those were considered by the town manager.
So if we could just, whenever we're going to talk about a document, let's make sure we're identifying it. There's a little bit of confusion because the select board received a packet from Mr. Mashtier before the hearing, which doesn't have numbers.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
That's what they're saying they
Okay.
have, but they don't have the numbers.
Okay.
It looks like there's a lot of overlap.
Yep.
So let's just be careful about,
Sure.
identifying the document by describing what it is, and we may need a minute to make sure everyone's got their hands on the same piece of paper, okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
Do you want to let me know when you're ready, or do you want me to kind of go through which documents we just have been talking about?
Yeah, what documents are you about to ask Ms. Johnson about now?
Yeah, so the document that I was going to was the notice of potential unpaid suspension, which is March 4, 2022, and it's Bates number town 31.
Mhm.
Starts town 31.
And then can you list off the documents that were part of that packet?
Actually I can, but I will tell you that the only document issued by the town is that 31. Starting at 32 is information that Mr. Mashtier sent to Ms. Johnson. And his submission goes from 32 all the way to 44. Carrie, did I get that right?
Yeah, so I have like page 2 is the October 20th memo, then there's the Collins Pearly Sports Complex
Right, and
letter.
so that's what I want to go through
Right.
slowly, so the board can
Yep.
flip through and make sure we're all looking at the same thing. So either if Attorney Stackpole or Ms. Johnson, one of you
Yep.
could do it, and just what you were doing, Carrie, just
Mhm.
list these documents, and the board can make sure we're all looking at the same thing.
Yep.
Thank you.
So it should start with a March 4th memo highlighted in yellow, and page 2 is October 20th memo from myself to Alan. That
The first one is town 31, is that right?
it is, if you have the numbers on it.
Yep.
So I'm gonna write it down.
Okay. Third page is a Collins Pearly Sports Complex letter from Tim Viennes.
33, down 33.
And then there's a memo on February 9th from Jen to our insurance company asking if we'd be allowed to set up a gym in our garage. That's 34. You good?
Yeah. keep
Unless,
going.
okay, keep going.
Hang on.
The next one is their response dated February 9th from Susan Benoit of the LCT Underwriting. And which, there you go. Then there's a copy of the salt agreement between the town and Ryan Jordan dated 12/30/21. Town letterhead. Then there's an ad. That looks like Bates 37. So ad of this year's ad that was placed in November for the plow truck. And there's a note from Mr. King that his bid for the truck, his bill of sale for the truck. Select board minutes from May 18th of 2020. That's that other truck I was talking about. Then there is a response. It's called regarding Carrie's March 4th letter. That's Alan's response to my March 4th letter. And it is called Town 00041, and then it goes on for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages to Town 45. And there's a March 11th letter. That's my letter saying after the ladder mill or the hearing in which I got information from Alan, then I made the decision that he's appealing tonight.
So I'll just stop you right there for 1 second, because that's kind of where our story was, if that's okay, John.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So Carrie, the point I was trying to get to too was that you mentioned in your testimony that Mr. Mashchair told you that he took care of the truck, this most recent truck, in the same way he did the last one, but Town 40 shows a different process than what was done here. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you did take into consideration the documents that were provided to you by Mr. Mashchair in connection with your notice to him that you were considering discipline. Is that correct?
I did.
And you did meet with him, and he had an opportunity to speak with you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in that meeting, what rationale did he give you for not following your directives?
I mean, for the plow truck, as we just said, he said it was done in the same manner. For the gym, he said I had told him he couldn't accept anything after he'd already accepted it. For the salt barter issue, he said, I didn't know you were talking about that. We don't actually sell salt. I bartered it. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but those were the bigger ones.
Okay. And so you considered that those excuses that he gave to you and any information that he provided you, is that correct?
I did, yes.
And after you considered that, what decision did you make?
Well, considering, I felt like I had three options. There could be a performance improvement plan, there could be suspension, or there could be termination, based on the average or an above average previous evaluations. I felt at this point that the best step forward would be I wanted to punctuate some of these things in an effort to stop them. And I thought a suspension 1 week without pay would be, I recommended that one. I recommended and then carried through that out.
Okay, and if we look at Town 46, is that your letter in which you inform him that you have chosen suspension?
Correct. Yep. March 11th, 2022 letter,
Okay.
which of course has been paused because of this appeal. Somebody did ask me that, so I'm going to clarify.
And then if you could go through and explain what the documents are that go from 47 to 69, please.
47 was Alan's response to that letter to me. And it
And then
goes,
are those attachments, are the rest of them attachments that he provided to you with his letter?
they are,
Okay. And did you, with regard to any of the arguments that he made in his letter, did you feel as though your decision after reading his letter, did you feel like your decision was still justified?
I do actually at this point, yes. I feel like on many occasions there were verbal warnings, the essence of which, let's not expand anything. Let's just let's do what we're currently doing. Let's not expand it at all. There's a lot of people are watching us and I don't want you to get in trouble kind of thing. Don't do anything new. And yet I'm hearing that something new is being done.
Okay.
I guess I think we are following procedure. And that's mentioned in that. There's a question of that in this letter, and I believe we are following proper protocol. I've been measured and deliberate in every action to afford the employee an opportunity. And I guess even given time and this much pressure and scrutiny, I would do the same thing. Again.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions at this time. Thank you, Carrie.
Ms. Johnson, before I call you Carrie, Ms. Johnson.
Carrie's fine.
Carrie, let's start with the June 2021 performance evaluation. That's Town's Exhibit 21.
Mhm.
You prepared that?
I did.
And he received four number 4 ratings and 2 number 3 ratings on that.
Yes.
And his overall rating was a 4.
Yes.
And your general comment was, thank you for your hard work. And you recommended a 3% wage increase. Is that correct?
Yes.
And looking at number 2, the heading of that number 2 is job performance. Your comments, please avoid rushing or pushing schedules to the point that thoroughness suffers. Getting approval the correct way for projects is required. Please avoid initiating projects. I assume that was without permits.
Yes.
Okay. No discussion in that number 2 about bartering arrangements.
No.
No discussion in that number 2 about donations.
Nope. No.
Any of the previous, how many annual evaluations have you done for Alan?
Probably 5. I think there's one every year, and then like an initial 90-day one.
Okay.
5 or 6.
In any of those evaluations, are you aware if you ever instructed Alan with respect to bartering arrangements or donations?
Not in during the evaluation process, no.
Right. You were aware, particularly with respect to the Bay Park, that the town had received considerable donations and sponsorships under Alan's guidance as the head of Department of Public Works.
Yes,
And did you ever have an issue with those donations and ever bring that to the attention of the select board?
no, I didn't have an issue. I did have somewhat of an issue in that I wasn't aware of the sponsorship program before it was initiated and funds had already started coming in. So I guess I had stated verbally that I would very much like to we need prior approval before we go out and collect sponsorship. So we did that this year, but
It was
during that evaluation, no.
wasn't back then? Okay. And have those projects that Alan started brought money in for the town, or have they cost anything for the town?
They have brought money in for the town.
Most of those initiatives at the Bay Park, have they paid for themselves?
Most of them have paid for themselves.
Have any of them, to your knowledge, added to the Department of Public Works budget?
Some might, I'm not sure. I mean, I can't say they're all cost neutral because we fund and staff them, but they aren't costing us too much money in materials.
Who would be the person who would know if those were costing the town money?
Well, when they started, we didn't require a budget, an event approval or event budget. So Alan and I would be responsible for that. Ultimately, I would be responsible for that, which is why the new policy requires event approval, prior event approval, so that we keep track of those things.
Okay, and Alan's handling of those events and initiating new events for the benefit of the town is not a basis for your recommended disciplinary action right now, is it?
No.
Okay, so in that number 2 job performance, please avoid initiating projects without permits. Can you give us some details on what projects Alan has initiated without permits since this evaluation?
Well, the reason I put that on there was because, albeit the intent was good, we put a ramp through our historic seawall at the Bay Park, and then Historic Preservation ran it up the pole, and I got a letter from the Attorney General in the state saying they were going to send it to Washington because we did it without permission. So I was taking that very seriously. Attorneys make me nervous for a number of reasons. There's too many of you in here right now. But so that was what I meant by that comment, that albeit it's great to put in a handicap ramp, but we violated some policies by not getting a permit ahead of time, and someone called the state on us. I don't know who.
Okay, I guess I wasn't clear on my question.
Okay.
Since that time, what projects has Alan initiated without getting proper permits?
I mean, I would say the gym didn't require a permit, so I can't recall any right now.
Okay, so at least in regard to your direction under number 2, Alan has complied with that. Would you agree?
Yes.
You said that the gym equipment came to your attention in October.
Yes.
Is that correct? And then after that came to your equipment, you did some investigating?
Yes. Sorry.
No,
Yes.
that's all right. I'll keep my paperwork straight. And then you issued a memo in October, is that correct? October 20th, it's town exhibit number 23.
Mhm.
And that was in response, in part for the gym equipment?
I think it was initiated over that road delineation, but let me just find it. That was submitted by Alan or myself. That's myself.
think that was submitted by both.
Okay, I think it was here though.
In the stack, it's right before the evaluation.
All the evaluations or just
The
one?
one we were just looking.
Oh, no, I got it.
So you issued this memo after Alan had accepted the gym equipment?
I did.
Okay. And
Well, this memo, and I had a conversation at that time that included the greenhouse, the installation of the road traffic things. So yeah, that's why this came to
Okay.
fruition.
and so at the time you issued this, you told him no more donations, correct?
Correct.
And you indicated in the last paragraph of this memo that a copy is going to be placed in Alan's personnel file. This isn't disciplinary. It is intended to clarify our conversation. Is that correct?
Correct.
So at that time, you weren't taking any disciplinary action or considering disciplinary action for the gym equipment issue. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And
I'm not sure if I knew about, well, anyway, yes, this is what I did and yeah, I have nothing at that.
and you told Alan to, in no uncertain terms, to get rid of the equipment.
I did.
Is that correct? And how soon after your direction did Alan get rid of the equipment?
I'm not sure exactly when, but I went to the garage on the 11th of March and it was gone. When I went there it was gone from the inside the building. When I went there again on the 24th, I still saw a treadmill out by the salt shed under the roof, but I don't know what the deal is there. It's not in the building
It's not
right
in the
now,
building.
but
How many times had you visited the town garage building between the date of your memo, October 20th, and that visit in March?
not very many. Like I said, I don't recall. It was very few.
So-
And often I would just go into Alan or John's office.
So do you have any idea of how quickly afterwards Alan removed that equipment from the town garage?
I would imagine very quickly, but I don't know. I just knew that I'd said, do it as quickly as you can. I'd like it out in a week. And I checked in that week. I didn't want to add additional pressure. I just went on the 11th and looked.
The 11th of,
I believe that I actually didn't get the response from the insurance company until the winter time. So when I had the conversation with Alan on the 3rd or 4th, whatever, the 4th, I said, get rid of the gym equipment. Cause the email for that had gotten lost. And I said a week and he got it done very quickly, I think. But I didn't want to check until the week that I'd given him. I thought that was fair.
and it was gone.
It was gone on the 11th. Yes, it was.
In your letter of March 4th, which is Town Exhibit 24, you said he went against your clear directive. Or in the first bullet, you said in direct defiance of this directive, it's come to your attention that you recently adopted a donation of gym equipment. Correct?
Yes.
That issue was dealt with back in October. Why were you?
I don't think, I think I misspoke earlier. The greenhouse issue, the other issues were from the summer, but the actual gym equipment, I wasn't aware of until not that long ago.
Do you know when you became aware of it?
I believe. No, I was there for, I was asked to go through the Department of Public Works to look at the water supply issue for the fire truck fill station. So whenever that happened, and I went through with an inspector.
And do you know when
Different
that-
issue, totally issue. I can get that for you, but right now I don't recall what that is.
Well, I mean, that's being used as a basis for your proposed 1-week suspension of Alan. Don't you think that, in fairness to Alan, that is a fact that you would want to have in mind before you made that decision?
I guess I don't have a response for that. I know that when I saw the gym there and once I realized, when I talked to him immediately after seeing the gym there or soon after, I said, I'm going to ask the insurance company to weigh in on this, but it was a good month and a half before I got that. So as soon as I got the response from the insurance company, I did act on it. But the date I discovered it, I thought was less critical than getting it out of there. That other document and inspection is the inspection is documented, so we can come up with that.
You had your assistant Jennifer check with the insurance company,
I did, yes.
and you received, or you reviewed the response received by, when I say insurance company, Vermont League of Cities and Towns.
That's correct.
Is that the insurance carrier for the town?
It is
And
property and casualty insurance.
And you're also a
liability.
member of VLCT,
Yes,
so you get advice from them.
yes,
And so the email from Susan Benoit at Vermont League of Cities and Towns is dated February 9th, 2022.
Mhm.
And that talks about potential issues. And then it goes through, is that correct?
yes.
Anywhere in that letter saying you need to get rid of that equipment immediately?
I don't know that she uses the word immediately, but I certainly took that to mean her bullets regarding liability were, and I'm liability adverse for the town, that we needed to get rid of it.
Okay. Did you ever ask Alan when that gym equipment was put into the facility?
I don't recall asking him when it was put in there, no. Well, we discussed it when we started discussing these things, but
And did Alan tell you that it was put in before your memo of October 12th?
he did respond that it was put in before I told him not to do it. My concern was he didn't even share with me at that time that it was already in.
But when you asked him to remove that equipment, he removed it immediately?
Correct.
Did you ever, as part of your investigation before writing your March 4th letter or making your final decision in your March 11th letter, check with anyone other than Alan to see if in fact he had that equipment in there before your memo?
No,
So you did, there was no independent investigation then to determine if he acted in your words, in direct defiance?
but even if he put it in the beginning of October, I had asked and stated in the review and verbally a number of times, no new programs, no new additions, no, don't accept any new things. In the summer of 2020, well before the October timeframe. So
That wasn't in the performance evaluation. Was it?
well, it was certainly implied by number 2 in my mind. Don't add any programs. It didn't specifically say no new gym equipment.
And you had said, I think, when Attorney Stackpole was asking you questions, you had given Alan several verbal warnings over the course of the last year.
Yes,
Accurate? And did you document those verbal warnings by putting a notice of those in his personnel file?
no, I did not. The verbal warning in my mind is the first level of discipline, and if adhered to, it doesn't usually need to go any further. As I stated earlier, he's been a good employee some of the time. It doesn't negate some of these other things, but that's why I did the verbal initially each time.
Let me ask you about the salt barter issue. At that time, was there a written town policy on bartering?
No,
Is there now?
yes,
And to your knowledge, prior to the barter policy being adopted, had the town engaged in bartering in the past?
yes,
And did this bartering arrangement in various forms save the town money or save the town expenses?
in many ways it did, yes.
And in fact, when Alan entered into this barter arrangement, it wasn't a secret arrangement. He put it in writing, correct?
After the second time I asked him about it, I did get I recently got a copy of that, but yes, that's what he stated.
How recently did you get a copy?
I think after the March, I believe it was in response to one of my questions, February or March. It was pretty recent.
You don't recall Alan leaving a copy of this in your office shortly after this date, December 30th?
I do not.
Can you tell me what you're referring to when you say this? Because I can't tell.
It is salt agreement between town and Ryan Jordan.
Thank you.
I mean, to be fair, in that timeline between Christmas and New Year's, I was moving. So I wasn't in the office that week.
So he certainly may have provided it. You didn't see it.
I don't lose many things. I'm in charge of a lot of things, but so I do not recall seeing that.
And in his documentation of that arrangement, he indicates that Mr. Jordan is going to provide work to the town, presumably this spring, to fuse a reducer coupler to a new water line. Is that correct?
Yes,
And
that's what it says.
Mr. Jordan is someone who has done work in the past for the town. Is that correct?
Yes,
And he is well regarded by the town in terms of a contractor who the town looks to hire when that work is needed.
yes.
The value of the work that he was going to do in exchange for the $65 worth of salt was $150.
That is what that memo says, yeah.
And there is does the town have a bid policy? If it's going to hire someone to do work for the town, does the bid policy require that the town get written bids for jobs under $5,000?
No, I do not believe it requires that, no.
Okay, so Alan did not violate the town's bid process by doing this barter arrangement with this gentleman, did he?
No,
And he presumably saved the town maybe $90 or so. Any
Yes.
reason to believe that Mr. Jordan is not going to follow through on the contract?
no, there's no reason to believe that.
Let me ask you about the truck that was sold. This is not the first truck that was sold by the Department of Public Works truck.
Correct,
The previous one was sold 2020.
20.
And is there a written bid process that the town has?
There is,
And what is, with respect to Department of Public Works vehicles, what is that bid process?
I'd have to consult the policy to go section by section, but really we asked to put it out into a newspaper. Give a certain amount of time. I don't remember if there's an X amount of time in there. And wait for the bids to come in. When I was referring to our policy, the ads were different from year to year. I wasn't commenting on the bid process per se.
In this case, who published or advertised the sale?
My assistant Jen, after getting a description from Alan.
Okay, and what information did she ask of Alan to provide so that she could publish the advertisement?
I don't know if you'd have to ask her. I mean, she said she worked with Alan to place the bid. I didn't ask her what information she used when placing the bid.
Do you know if it's the same information that Alan had provided to her in the past for the 2020 vehicle?
Well, I do know that it's not the same because the ad from 2020 said V plow. I'm sorry, I'm not a mechanic. I don't pretend to be, but it was very specific about the kind of plow that we had and the box that was on the plow truck from 2020. The one from 2021 doesn't mention a plow.
Do you recall what the one from 2021 mentioned?
Yeah, we submitted it, I believe. Thought I did, but let's just see. I can't remember that ad. It's weird.
You know what? Don't worry about
That's
that.
okay. I mean, I do have a copy of
Okay.
it, but.
So the 2020 advertisement
Mhm.
advertised a plow truck.
Yes,
The F-350 that was sold, this most recent sale, was not a plow truck, was it?
yes, it was.
Had a plow on it?
Came with, yeah.
Well, no, he'll
Okay,
have his chance.
okay.
Did it have a plow on it?
It came with a plow. Yes.
So the high bidder received the truck and a plow?
Yes,
Who, as I understand it, there was one bid submitted. Is that correct?
yes,
And that was after a 2-week period of advertising.
Sounds right, yes.
And then all of the bids, the only bid in this case, went to Alan's mailbox at the town. That'd be correct?
Yes,
And
probably is.
Opened that bid.
Mhm.
And then awarded the bid to the sole bidder. What part of that process that Alan went through was in violation of the town's bid process?
I think the only part of it that bothered me was the lack of information about the plow, because we live in Vermont and a lot of people would have probably bid on the plow if that information had been included, and it was included in 2020.
Okay, so the fact that didn't mention a plow is your concern. Did you, after this, so how did this come to your attention? You said in your letter, it has come to my attention. How did this come to your attention?
A couple, at least one employee had stated their concern with me, and one select board member, I can't remember which one at this point, said they were concerned about that and would have wanted to bid on it.
Okay.
Which is why it was another department head. I mean, everyone.
And how is this advertised? Is it advertised in the Messenger?
It is, it was,
Is it posted at the town office?
believe so.
So any employee who came in and looked or read the newspaper would have had an opportunity to inspect the truck and bid on it?
Essentially, yes, I guess that's the idea of requiring it to go in the paper.
Okay. And after these people raised their concerns to you, before you wrote the March 4th letter to Alan, advising that you're contemplating disciplinary action, did you do any further investigation to see what the value of that truck was, or whether the town ended up not getting fair value for that truck?
I didn't do any investigation for the value, but I did ask for a copy of the 2020 ad.
Okay. So do you have any idea, as far as this truck we're talking about, whether or not it was worth the $800 that it was sold for, worth more than that or less than that?
I don't know how much the truck itself would be worth, but I know from personal experience, a friend just sold a truck with 300,000 miles on it with a plow for $8,000. So I know it probably was worth more than $800, but.
And you were aware prior to this sale that Jeff King was one of the people interested in bidding on this truck. Is that correct?
Yes.
You knew that because you had a personal conversation with him.
With Jeff,
Yes.
I did, and with Alan, who
Okay.
wanted, yep, he asked if he could just bid it, let employees bid on it, and we, discussed that we could not do that.
Okay. And he abided by that direction.
Yes, he put it out to bid. I mean, the conversation I had with Jeff King was very straightforward because he'd heard I was trying to sell a truck, but I'd already sold it, so the conversation was super short.
Let me ask you, subsequent to your March 4th letter, Alan provided you information, and then you issued a letter dated March 11th.
Yes,
And I'm looking to see what number that is.
town 00046. And it is, let's see, right after Alan's response to my March 4th letter.
Okay, so I have that. So let me ask you a couple of questions about that letter. In addition to the 3 issues you raised in your March 4th letter, and that being the gym equipment, the salt barter, and the sale of the town truck, you mentioned in the 3rd paragraph that Alan is not thinking things through and offering information without thinking it through. And you give, as an example, a suggestion that he made about dumping certain wastewater down the drain at the town garage. Did that conduct factor into your decision to issue Alan a 1-week unpaid suspension?
It was part of my decision. It was a very minor part. I understand the context. We were throwing ideas out, but after getting in trouble at multiple different levels for not having permits, any suggestion of that is unacceptable. We can't do anything without a permit.
So as I understand it, you and Alan are both on the committee that is dealing with the construction of the new town hall. Is that correct?
Correct.
And there was a meeting to discuss the issue of there's too much salt in the well water,
That's correct.
and the town is looking for a solution to get rid of the salinity or bring it down to acceptable levels.
That's correct.
And Alan made a suggestion about a possible option. Is that correct?
He did.
And that's the suggestion that you say was not being thought through.
That was one of a number of them.
Okay.
It's minor, but it was one of them.
Have you looked through, are you familiar with Alan's job description?
Yes.
And have you read through that recently?
I read through it this afternoon again. I hadn't read through it since his evaluation.
Would you agree that in that job description, under the competencies which an individual should demonstrate, those include problem solving and innovation, displaying original thinking and creativity?
Yes, I would agree with that.
And that meeting that was held for the committee on the new town hall, that was a problem solving issue.
We were brainstorming, yes.
And so is it your position that the director of public works should not be joining in on the brainstorming session without first passing by his ideas past you?
No, that's not what I meant to imply at all. I mean, what I meant to imply was I have been digging out of some problems that involve lack of permits, and I'm getting weary of trying to dig out and apologize for not having permits when we should have permits. So that was the gist of what I was trying to get across in this letter.
Okay, and subsequent to that meeting, have the engineers working on that project or the committee looked further at Alan's suggestion?
It wasn't in the forefront. I had a meeting last Friday and we talked for 2 hours about the salinity of the water with engineers. And that was not mentioned as one of the top 4 ideas. But I mean, we knew that it was an option of the option, I guess the select board probably isn't aware of what we talked about last Friday, but of still putting the waste from the RO reverse osmosis system into a holding tank and then taking it to the sewer plant. Alan did find out that there's a fee for that, and we can do that for a small per gallon fee.
And the engineers who are working on this have said that's a feasible solution?
Bringing it.
I'm gonna object to questions actually that relate to matters outside the scope of the disciplinary timeframe. These are questions about activities that have happened after she issued the discipline, as I can tell from the conversation.
Your question. Alan made a suggestion. She's indicated it shows a lack of judgment. And I'm just curious to see whether or not the people on that committee and who were involved in that project have found it to be an irrational idea.
We'll allow the answer, but let's try to move along. Okay.
Sure.
The committee certainly considered taking the waste from the RO to the sewer plant, but not the original. I have a drain in the wash bay and we can just bring it there, which was the comment. And I understand we're brainstorming, but even the slightest implication that we're going to take what is considered waste and dump it into the drain in our wash bay, I didn't find acceptable.
You'd agree, though, ultimately, everyone on that committee knew that it was going to be up to the engineers what the proper way to being.
Yeah, yes, I would agree with that part.
Okay. I don't have any more questions.
Karen, do you have some redirect?
I don't have any more questions, no.
All right. Select board members, do any of you have any questions for Mary Johnson? Brendan, could you hear us that if you have questions for Carrie, now would be the time?
I'm all set, thank you.
So I have a question, just for clarity. Was the request not to accept donations in October? Was that before or after the gym had arrived? I don't think we hammered that out. Do you know if that was the case?
I do not.
So.
I actually have one clarifying. Question. Equipment question, we have Town 34 is the email from Jen Gray to VLCT asking about gym equipment.
Mhm.
And that's dated February 9, 2022.
Yes.
Does working off of that date give you a better recollection of when you recall the gym equipment first coming to your attention? When you first became aware of it?
It was likely that week, but like I said, I went through it for I was concentrating on the water supply issue for the garage bay, but it was at that time that I went through and it was on a Wednesday, so it might have been that same day. Very likely that same day, but I can't be sure until I check the date of that inspection.
Is there any possibility you became aware of the gym equipment prior to the October 2021 memo that mentions the greenhouse?
I mean, I don't recall it right now. I don't recall hearing that we were getting that donation. I'm pretty risk adverse. I feel like I would remember that, maybe not the date, but I would remember talking about it, but I don't recall hearing that we were gonna start a gym in the Public Works Department.
I have one more question. With regard to the bartering of the salt, would the town manager be notified regardless of before entering any bartering agreement? Anywhere, like, does that go through the town manager or is that delegated to somebody else, Alan, to just take care of that? And would that be a reason why you wouldn't be made aware of it, or should have you been made aware of it? Is it? I'm just wondering about clarity about.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not involved with every barter. I hadn't been before we put that policy in place. It's kind of, we were reacting to that situation and realizing we needed to put more guardrails up so that at least myself or Corey or someone else would be a part of that conversation so that we wouldn't be surprised if it happens and someone objected to it.
Let me just give the attorneys one more chance because there were a few other questions. I don't know if you had any follow-up to anything that just was asked.
I don't.
Aaron, you're good? Okay. Okay, so that's it for Carrie Johnson. Thank you. Aaron, do you have any other witnesses you want to call?
We do not.
All right. Would folks like to take a 5-minute break? We're been at it about an hour and a half, or you just want to keep going?
I'm fine with keep going.
Sure. Okay. Okay. So at this point, Attorney Carroll.
I'm gonna ask Jeff King to answer some questions.
Okay, let me just kind of scooch a chair up. Please. Now, and I'll just, yeah, sure. Just slide up a little bit. Okay. Sure. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Just so we have a clear record, your name is Jeff King, correct? And you're employed by the town in the Department of Public Works, correct? And how long have you worked there?
Since end of May.
And what is it that you do day to day?
Mechanic.
You have training as a mechanic?
Yes, I do.
And this, one of the issues we've talked about, as you heard, has been the sale, the bidding and purchase by you of a Ford F-350. Correct. What year was that?
2011.
Okay. When you, received the bill of sale for that, how many miles did it have on it?
Close to probably, I think 120 was 118 and 18 change, maybe somewhere in that area.
And that included a plow?
It did.
And what kind of a plow was it?
It was not a boss, but
What's that?
no, it wasn't a fish. It was snowing.
Okay.
I think it was snowing.
At some point, it came to your attention that that truck was gonna be put out for bid by the town?
Correct.
And do you recall how that came to your attention?
Actually, I was talking with Alan about looking for a truck. He had mentioned that Gary had one, and I went and saw her, and I knew this one was going to be coming up for bid. So I asked if I could have permission to bid on it,
Yep.
and I did.
And you had permission to bid on it, but it was also open to the general public.
Correct.
Okay. And prior to the, to your submitting a bid, did you have a chance to actually look at that truck?
I did.
As the mechanic for the department, were you familiar with that truck?
Yes, I did. I asked if I could look at the truck on my own time. That was granted. And I did look at the truck.
And was the truck, at the time you looked at it, was it in a condition that it would have passed inspection?
No.
Can you,
As a matter of fact, it was been 2 years since the last inspection.
okay. What was the condition of the truck generally?
Well, considering the body was routed out, the bed was completely gone, front fenders were completely gone. Truck didn't run, batteries were no good. It had 4 out of the 8 injectors leaking. Needed all new brakes, all new tires. Needed some front end work. Also, the plow didn't work. So yeah.
So there were some issues with it.
Quite a few issues, and I knew that. That's why I did what I did.
And your bid was $800. And did you have any inside information from Alan or anyone else in the town about how many bids had been received?
No, that wasn't any of my concerns. I figured that if I won, I would get approached with it.
And did you prepare the bid to submit?
No, actually, I asked my wife to put it in writing because I didn't put a lot of it in mind.
And it was put in writing and mailed to the town
Yes.
as the advertisement said you should do?
Yeah, I can't remember what the advertisement did completely say, but
And at the end of the bidding process, however long that was, did Alan notify you that you were the successful bidder?
it was actually quite a while after, and I asked him, I said, just curious of what was going on with it. And he says, at this point, said you were the only bidder.
And then he gave you a bill of sale and you paid the town $800?
Yeah, and we did that within a few days after.
And you have some mechanic skills as the town mechanic.
Yeah.
And did you spend a fair amount of time on that truck afterwards in order to?
I probably got roughly, and I'm probably lowballing this, I probably got over 100 hours working on the truck. And be aware it's still not done.
In terms of, aside from your hours, how about parts and materials?
Well, I probably would cry if I added up the slips, but I probably got over 10,000 into it.
And have you been able to have it inspected? Is it inspectable now?
It is inspectable now.
And have you used it?
Used it a couple times, but there's still some issues that need to be addressed, and I gotta do that before I can drive it.
Are you, have you used that for plowing other people's property and making money with it?
No, because when I originally bought it, when I went to hook up the plow didn't work. I ended up putting in roughly almost $1,300 in the plow to get the plow to function.
I don't have any other questions.
I just have a couple of questions. Sir, did you, are you a, someone who is certified to actually appraise cars at all?
I'm not certified to appraise cars. I've bought my share in the past and bought cars from auctions.
Okay,
Kind of know values of things and what not to spend and what to spend.
okay, but you don't have any specific appraisal licensure or certification?
No,
Okay, and sir, did you have that truck looked at and appraised by anyone who does do that for a living before you purchased it?
no.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Select board members, do you have any questions?
I do. When you say that Carrie had a truck, was it this truck or some other truck that Carrie had?
It was a truck of hers.
A separate
It
truck?
was a separate. I was looking for a vehicle.
Okay.
Where I worked, I was given a company car. And now I was looking for a truck to kind of, I needed the use of one. And I'm a type of person who likes to borrow things. I wanted a vehicle, something inexpensive to get me back and forth and to do what I needed to do.
Then I guess I can't ask Alan anything. But yeah, well, you said that Alan waited to give you the bid, to let you know.
Well, I hadn't heard anything.
For how long after?
To be honest, I really couldn't remember. It could have been 2-3 weeks, maybe. I'm not absolutely sure. I was just kind of curious because I was at the point where if I didn't win the bid, I needed to go a different route. More likely that would be going to the auction and trying to purchase something that route.
Anyone else on the board? Any other follow-up from the attorneys?
No.
Okay. I have no questions for you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have Alan match.
Mr. Mashton, raise your hand, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Alan, how long have you been the head of the Department of Public Works?
I'm in my 6th year.
Okay, and prior to this series of events, have you ever received any prior disciplinary actions by your supervisor?
No.
And have you received commendations or thanks from either the town manager or the town in general?
Yes.
And in particular,
Just a second. Mr. Mashton, could you try to keep your voice up so that everybody?
Okay.
Thank you.
Alan, what are your responsibilities as the head of the Department of Public Works?
I oversee road maintenance, everything from ditch cleaning, road paving, plowing, tree removal. I oversee our parks, our diversion canals, and 2 municipal sewer pump stations.
And how many people work for you in the department?
I have 6 full-time employees in the public works. I have a park manager that works under me, and then various part-timers during the summer that work in the parks.
Okay. And do you have regular hours that you work?
Well, my schedule hours are 6 to 2:30. A lot of times I work over, but I'm constantly getting phone calls at night and weekends, and the alarms from the sewer plant goes off at whenever it occurs.
Are you responsible for being on call or being accessible 24/7?
Not. No, I guess. I mean, it's
You're not on call, but people call you anyway. Would that be what you're saying?
yes.
Since you started in the Department of Public Works, have you started any initiatives or programs that you thought would benefit the town?
Yes.
And in particular, I'm going to ask you about the Bay Park. Have you started programs or initiatives in the park that have benefited the town?
Yes.
Can you describe briefly those initiatives or programs that you brought to the town?
I started with the farmer's market. I thought bringing healthy choices to the community was good. The car show was next, which has turned out to be a huge event, profitable to the town. Since then, it's been various other ones. We brought the Brew Fest, Thursday night concert series, Holly Jolly Jamboree that just started this past year. It got postponed the year before because of COVID. We have the Fall Festival. We've recently taken over the Great Race from the Chamber of Commerce. And all of these events are profitable to put towards the parks.
Now, other than the Great Race, are all of these programs new since you started?
Yes.
And what type of work did it take by you to put the park in a condition where people would actually want to come to it, participate in these events?
It took a lot of work. When I came on, the walking path wasn't completed. I started with getting the walking path completed so people can walk. We keep it plowed and salted during the winter, so people are walking constantly if it's 20 degrees out or if it's 100 degrees. We've cleaned the park up, and I tried keeping staff there because when I first started, there was people doing drugs in cars and stuff there, and you don't see that anymore. And by bringing activities and making the community better, you have a lot more people down there.
Have these initiatives you put in place, in your mind, required some creative thinking and some resourcefulness?
Yes,
And have you managed to do all of these things within your Department of Public Works budget?
yes,
And as part of the work that you've done and the programs that you've brought, have you, as the town, received donations from townspeople or businesses that support these initiatives?
yes.
And can you describe generally what types of donations and support the town has received?
Well, as far as sponsorship, last year we brought in between $50,000 and $60,000 worth of sponsorship money towards our events. But I think the most important one is the volunteers. And since I started these events, I bet I got anywhere between 25 and 30 volunteers that work at the car show. The same amount for the Great Race, and same with a lot of our other events. The community is getting involved in volunteering, and I think that's the most important thing about these events. You can make money, but making our community better is what it's all about.
And have these programs paid for themselves through the revenue and the sponsorships that have been brought in?
Yes,
And has there been a surplus?
yes,
And where did that money go?
to the Stonehouse account.
And that's a town account, just to be clear.
Yes,
Okay, so the town has that money, and the idea is to, subject to select board approval, use that money to renovate the stone house at the park?
correct. If I could just say one thing.
Sure.
When I took this job, I made it my mission to make things better in the town. And by starting these events and doing stuff in the parks, my goal is that the park would be self-sustainable with the money that comes in from these events and activities, that it's less stress of taxes amongst our townspeople.
And has Carrie taken that sponsorship idea and implemented some new rules, working with the select board that's going to be in place going forward?
Yes,
What about the donation of specific items? You received a donation of concrete blocks,
yes.
and can you describe who that came from and what the purpose was?
We got a donation of concrete blocks twice, both from Harrison Concrete. The first time that was at our salt shed. They used the cement blocks. They're the waste blocks. They used them for bracing on the trusses when the salt shed was being built, because the trusses were so big. They asked if the town could use them. I said yes. It was cheaper for them to donate them to the town than manpower to truck them out. And those became useful in making gravel bins out in the back that would keep gravel on hand. for emergency situations. The second time was at the new town hall. They used it once again for bracing. There were the interlocking blocks, and there was 30 of them. It's about $7,500 worth of interlocking blocks. And once again, they had to be out on a specific day. They were so busy, they didn't have time. They asked if we could use them and get them out. I said yes. Since then, I've used them for retaining walls. We used them to hold the tent down for our events and various other things. Divider walls around our brine tanks in the salt shed. So they have saved the town money from buying blocks to do what I've used them for.
Was Carrie aware of that donation of concrete blocks from Harrison Concrete?
Yes,
And did she send Harrison a thank you letter, to your knowledge, thanking them for the donation to the town?
she did.
Prior to October of this past year, was there a town policy, a formal policy in place regarding donations to the town or sponsorships, to your knowledge?
Not that I know of.
And at some point in the summer, you talked to someone about receiving gym equipment,
Correct.
and who was that?
Tim Vians at the Collins Burley complex.
And how did that conversation, or how did that discussion come up?
I had mentioned that I was trying to get an initiative that our employees would stay a little healthier. So he reached out to me and said, hey, we're updating some of our weight equipment. And if the town would like it, he was willing to donate some of it to us.
The idea of getting exercise equipment in the town garage, is that consistent with town policy in your mind?
Well, I'd say yes, for the simple reason the town has a policy of giving $200 stipend to employees for healthiness. Be sneakers or a health fitness program or whatever.
And had you brought up the idea in the past of your employees, Department of Public Works employees, pooling that $200 stipend to get equipment as a group?
I did at one select board meeting. It was a warrant about someone getting reimbursed the $200. And I brought it up briefly and said that we had talked about pooling our money to put either a treadmill or like a rowing machine in the gym or in the garage, that the employees could use, and it would be an asset of the town. So instead of wasting money on a gym membership, this equipment would always be there for employees to use.
You've seen Carrie's memo of October 20th, 2021, about not accepting donations.
Yes,
Had this equipment been picked up by you and set up in the garage prior to that memo being issued?
yeah,
And do you recall specifically when that was picked up by you and put in there?
it was the first week of October. It was given to us. He had offered it this earlier in the summer, but all the new equipment, because of everything's transporting slow, it hadn't showed up. So he had called me and it was given and picked up first week of October.
And at that point, did you have, when you picked it up and brought it to the garage, do you have any reason to believe that you were in violation of a town policy or exposing the town to some sort of liability?
I did not at that time.
Are the jobs of the people who work for you in the Department of Public Works, are they physical jobs where good health and fitness would be helpful?
Yes,
And at some point, did they use the equipment while it was there?
a couple guys had. Actually, our local sheriff's department, I came in during the day and used it also. Sheriff's department has a police contract with the town, and they had noticed that we had it. Had asked if they could come in and use it.
When, do you recall when Carrie told you to get rid of that equipment?
Yep. It was in February. I went on February vacation from February 14th to the 21st. She did her walkthrough of the garage with the city of St Albans over the water issue. And she talked to me that week. Within 3 days, I had the equipment out of the building and gone, except for the leg press that was out underneath the salt shed, which is gone now. But it was a heavy piece of equipment, and the individual that was taking it needed to get a trailer to get it out of there.
But it was out of the garage and not being used by your people
Correct.
within 3 days.
Yep.
Okay. Let me ask you about the salt barter arrangement. How did that come about?
Brian Jordan gave me a call. It was right towards the end of a storm. He was desperate. He needed like 1 yard of salt to finish a project he was on. He asked if we were selling salt. I told him we're not selling salt. I said, "What's up?" He says, "Oh, I got to go all the way to Burlington. I just had a little bit left. I was looking to buy salt." And at that time, I said, "I can't sell salt." And then I realized I'm going to need this fusing done. He's the only one in the area that's got a fuser. I said, "Look, if we do a one-time deal, I'll give you 1 yard of salt. In return, you fuse this pipe." If I just say something else. The confusion with the selling of the salt, if you guys listen since I've been here, we've dealt with salt contracts, the state salt contract, for every year I've been here. And it's like a black market to buy salt all the towns. I do not do the salt contract. I get our salt through Canada. I'm paying $10 less a ton for salt instead of doing the state contract. So my goal, and I said this to Carrie and previous select boards, is I'd love to have a spur off of the railroad up there with a building and sell salt. And I have talked to VLCT about this, and they said we could co-op it to offset the cost of the salt that the town uses and the equipment it takes to do it. So when Carrie had asked me about selling salt, if she had just came out and said, "Hey, did Ryan Jordan get salt?" I would have said yes. I didn't think nothing of it because I had been on vacation. She's been on vacation. Our paths don't cross all the time. If it, it's just general, we're busy. But going around asking me, "Are you selling salt? Or are you selling salt?" I was not selling salt. And every time I thought, she was thinking about, am I selling to the towns or something? There really wasn't.
Did you put this agreement in writing?
Yes.
And
Could you tell us again, just so we're all clear with it?
I'll see if I can find that.
Just describe. it.
Okay,
We don't need the number.
it's a document called Salt Agreement between town and Ryan Jordan. So you prepared this
Yes.
and both you and Ryan signed this,
Yes.
and it was dated December 30th, 2021.
Yes.
After you signed this, how long was it before you brought a copy to Carrie's office?
It might have been at least 3 weeks.
You provided it to her within 3 weeks.
Yes.
And were you familiar with Ryan Jordan as a contractor who did work for the town in the past?
Yes.
And is he a competent person in your mind to do this fuse reducer coupler?
Yes. He did all the fusing over municipal sewer at the public garage.
And this arrangement would save a little bit of money for the town
Yes.
and help out a contractor as well.
Yes.
And this work for $150 is not the type of work that you would have to put out the bid.
No.
So if it was work that the Department of Public Works had to go out and hire someone, you'd be free to go out and hire whoever you wanted to do this work.
Correct.
And to your knowledge, had the town done various types of barter arrangements in the past?
Yes. Ever since I've been here.
So can you give an example?
Yep. Since I've come on board 5 years ago, the city and the town share the responsibility of the diversion canal. That's out behind the Jolly maintenance building. That gets engineered by the state every year, and there is work to be done every single year. In return for the town of St. Albans doing the work and keeping it maintained to the state level that they tell us, the city does their street sweeping that I have them do through the industrial park and that to meet our stormwater permits. And they also use their vac truck to clean our catch basin.
And does that barter arrangement save the town money?
Yes,
Does the town have the equipment to do its own street sweeping to comply with the stormwater permit?
no,
Does the town have the other equipment needed to do the second job that you mentioned?
no.
Do you have any idea how much that equipment would cost the town if it had to go out and purchase it?
A street sweeper for a small model is gonna start you at 150,000 to 200,000. And a Vector truck is $500 million up.
So in that context, when you entered into the SALT agreement, did you think you were doing anything that was contrary to a town policy?
No.
Let me ask you about the bidding process for the truck that we have talked about. You've heard a description of what happened. What was your understanding when this truck was going to go up for bidding about what the bidding process was?
That I give a description to Gary's assistant, he advertises it. The advertisement says what the description is and that it's, I am notified, my name is in there with a phone number, so if people want to go and see it, they're able to contact me and make an appointment to see the truck. After that, I collect all bids, I open them, and then award it to the winning bid.
And how long have you been involved in that bid process?
I've done various bids for the town since I've started here.
How many bids do you recall going through that involved Department of Public Works vehicles?
Twice,
This was the second one.
yes,
And it was mentioned that there was no mention of a plow on this one.
correct.
Was that an intentional oversight, or was that a crucial part of the bid in your mind?
It's an oversight on mine. It wasn't a deliberate oversight. I just was under the assumption it was going with it because the frame's already attached to the truck.
Okay.
So I didn't really, to be honest, didn't think much of it.
When you provided, who did you provide the information to so that the ad could be run in the paper?
Done great.
And did Jen ask for any additional information
No,
other than the fact that there was a plow involved? Was it all the same information that you had provided previously?
yes,
And was Carrie aware that this truck was being, they sent out for bid, for lack of a better expression?
yes,
And she knew that Jeff was interested.
yes.
And you had you talked to her in the past about the possibility of allowing employees to bid on town equipment first?
I have.
And what was your thinking in doing that?
So with pay rates going up around the country and that, and our associates not making a lot of money, I went to Carrie and said, could we possibly, when there's assets from the town being put out the bid, could we do it in-house? It could be town hall, fire department, public works, anyone that works for the town, putting out bid them first as a benefit to them. And she said she would talk to the board. And in a couple of days, she came back and said the board says no, but employees can bid with the public.
And was that series of conversations prior to this truck going out to bid?
Yes,
Did you follow the bidding process for this particular truck?
I followed it the same way I did the last bid truck in 2020.
And what was the time period that the truck was advertised?
2 weeks.
And during that 2 weeks, did anyone call you to ask to inspect the truck?
No,
And was Jeff's bid the only bid that was received?
yes.
And how was that information provided to Carrie or to her office?
Usually after a bid, I turn everything into Anna, and I believe she shares it with Jen. but usually after a bid, at least with the last truck, I bring the bid in, the check, bill of sale, and then Anna digs out the title and registration or all that stuff that she has in the vault. It all gets signed over to whoever wins the bid. And then I know she keeps a packet, the town clerk does, and I believe Jen does too.
And the check, does the check go to you? Who does the check go to?
Check goes to the town clerk. It's made out to the town of St Albans.
And you know how soon into this 2-week process Jeff's bid was received?
He had put a bid in within the first week.
And that was the only bid that was received?
Yes,
Did you open it until the end of the 2 weeks?
I opened it after the 2 weeks.
And when he talked about it, took a couple weeks to get information.
Yeah, it wasn't top priority. I knew the truck had to get out of there before winter, but it wasn't my top priority. I had salt coming in and finishing up projects to get ready for winter, getting the plows on the truck, so releasing a truck wasn't really my top priority. I got a town to make sure the roads are maintained.
But you notified him and then signed over the bill of sale and he paid the town for that.
Yes,
Alan, the last thing I'm going to ask you about is this issue of the dumping of the salt water as part of the town hall project that was raised in Kerry's letter of March 11th. How did that come up? In what context?
it was a committee meeting with the new town hall, and we're coming up with solutions. And I preferenced it as a spitball idea that we could put a holding tank in, because I asked the well driller roughly how much saline would be given off daily. And I said we could possibly put 1,000-gallon tank in the ground, collect this water. And I said we could use our brine tank on a trailer and pump it once or twice a week, whatever we needed to, and dump it down our drain at the garage, meaning that our drain all goes to the municipal sewer. I wasn't dumping it down. It wouldn't have an environmental impact like it was written, like it's to go to the municipal sewer. And the comment came up right after I suggested it that we would have to talk to the city. And I said, of course, we got to talk to it because it's more waste going to the city. We'd have to know how much it costs.
What was the issue that you were trying to get a resolution for?
Well, the well has a high content to salt, and we need a osmosis system. So for every gallon of fresh water, you're going to get a gallon of salt water, and you can't put that into a septic system. So we need to dispose of it in a proper way. And we're so close to the lake, and everyone is stumbling around thinking of ideas. I had this idea and I spitballed it out there.
And to your knowledge, is the committee still looking at that as a one feasible solution?
I believe it's one of two solutions. After the meeting on Friday that I was in with Carrie, I know DEW is looking towards purchasing a tank this week. I know that ain't in front of the select board yet, but it is one of two solutions.
Do you believe that your efforts to come up with a solution is consistent with your job description?
Yes,
And why did you understand that you were on that committee for the new town hall?
Carrie invited me onto that committee because of construction and past projects. So I've problem solved a lot of projects in the town, and I figured that's why I'm there.
And you thought that was part of your charge for being on the committee?
Yes,
Let me ask you about the suggestions of lack of candor or insubordination. You want to address those?
I believe I'm upfront with Carrie all the time. We have a weekly meeting. Sometimes I just stop in her office and just say, hey, what's going on? This is going on. I've always been upfront. She knows that I wear my job on my sleeve, that I'm very transparent. So I hear those, I felt like I was being slapped in the face. I give my heart and soul to this town and the job that I do. And I feel that I'm very transparent.
Were there suggestions in your annual reviews that you needed to work on candor or transparency?
No.
To your knowledge, have any of your decisions cost the town money?
No, I've saved the town money.
And these specific examples that we're talking about, have any of these cost the town money in your mind?
No.
I don't have any other questions.
Aaron,
Yeah, thank you. I have a few questions, and I don't know if perhaps town 2122 can be put in front of witness, please.
the evaluation.
Yes, sir. It's the evaluation for July 2021.
He has it.
Okay, Mr. Masher, have you had a chance to take a look at that?
Yes.
Okay. Directing your attention to number 5. In number 5, for the comments, it says, Alan works well with all town employees and the public. And then it says, please refrain from making program changes without prior authorization. No additional activities, statues, equipment should be added to parks. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And so in terms of your testimony, you mentioned that you were working on a new initiative about employees staying healthy. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes.
And is that a new initiative that you started after the date that you received this directive?
Not really. The town initiates the $200 towards healthiness since I've been here. So it's just kind of feeding off what the town already does.
Okay, but that was something that you thought of that initiative after this particular date of 7/8/21, is that right?
I wouldn't say I thought of it. I mean, it was something that's already implemented. I was just feeding into it.
Well, so, but there had not been an initiative prior to you speaking to Tim Viennes about equipment. There hadn't been any initiative to bring any athletic equipment on to the town office areas or to the town property. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so if you were embarking on a new initiative, as you testified, to get people healthier, isn't that something that you should have gone to Carrie about and gotten some permission before you accepted the equipment?
Yes, but I do believe in one of our weekly meetings, I had mentioned about gym equipment. And like I also said, I brought up about putting equipment in the garage at a select board meeting, and nothing ever was arised or said then.
So it's not your testimony. Actually, let me put it this way. You never did receive permission from Carrie or the select board to ever accept equipment, exercise equipment from any outside source. Is that correct?
Yes.
And as part of your initiative to think about getting people more healthy, you didn't check with the town or anybody else if there would be potential liability associated with you bringing any sort of exercise equipment into town offices. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And yet you accepted that donation and you brought it on to the town and it started to get used by employees. Is that correct?
Correct.
Without any permission that you received or information that you received about any sort of potential liability or insurance issues. Is that right?
Correct.
And With regard to the sheriff's department, you also mentioned that the sheriff's department, you mentioned something about the sheriff's department checking insurance coverage. Is that something that you actually checked into with regard to that equipment?
I don't remember saying anything about checking insurance with the sheriff's department.
Sorry, perhaps I misunderstood you.
Hi.
Well, just 1 second, Karen. Carrie, you can confer with Karen. Let her know you want to confer with her
Okay.
after she's done, and then if she has another
Okay.
question.
You can move on. She can go on for right now. I'll just.
Go ahead, Karen. Carrie wants to speak to you about that line of questioning I suggested after you
Yep.
keep going.
That sounds fine. Thank you. Okay, and so in terms of any sort of program that related to health and fitness and bringing health and fitness equipment or trainers or anything like that onto the premises, you never got permission from Carrie to do that. Is that right? Before you did it? Okay. And in terms of the salt barter, the timing of the salt barter, that was in December of 2021, is that correct?
Correct.
And that salt barter was also after you received the directive in your July 2021 evaluation not to engage in, new initiatives, is that right?
I don't consider bartering an initiative.
So if bartering is a practice that the town is, in terms of the actual salt bartering, I believe your testimony was that you did not have a salt barter program. Is that correct?
We didn't have a barter program here.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said we don't have a barter program, period.
Okay. But in this particular situation, you actually created a written agreement with this particular person about a salt barter program, did you not? Or a salt barter transaction, is that correct?
I did.
So you went to the trouble of writing an official document where an official contract about the barter, but you didn't think it was important to actually check with Carrie before you entered into a legally binding agreement about that kind of a barter system.
I guess not.
Okay. And the bid for the truck did come with a plow, is that correct?
Yes,
And in the description that you provided to the town for advertising, you did not indicate that there was a plow, is that correct?
I believe it was not on the description, yes.
You believe it was on the description of the car?
And I believe it was not on the description.
Okay, and you would agree with me, would you not, that somebody would be more likely to bid higher on something like a truck like that if they knew it actually came with a plow?
Possibly.
Okay, so you actually could have gotten more money for that truck if you'd actually advertised it as having a plow, probably.
Possibly.
Okay. And you didn't talk to, did you talk to Carrie specifically about before you advertised that particular truck?
I did not.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Okay, Carrie, do you need to talk to Karen to?
No, I sent her a text. I think we're good.
I think we are good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Redirect.
Okay, Ellen, just a couple of quick questions. I know we've been here for a while. That performance evaluation from 2021, number 2. You have that in front of you. It's Town's Exhibit 21.
Yes.
That job 2, the comments. Please avoid initiating projects without permits. Would you consider accepting a donation of exercise equipment to be a new initiative or a project?
No,
Did any part of that free equipment require you or the town to obtain a permit?
no,
Did you consider that one-time barter arrangement to be a new town initiative or project?
no,
And to your knowledge, did you have to get a permit, or did the town have to get a permit for that?
no.
And your reason for putting this in writing was what?
It's a legal contract. I did a service for him and I want in writing that he's doing the service for the town.
And in your mind, was that written agreement to protect and benefit the town?
Yes.
I don't have anything else.
I'm good.
Any select board members have any questions for Mr. Mashter?
Where, I don't know if everyone heard him. Where did the gym equipment go? Asked Jack.
Various places. I asked Carrie what I should do with it. She informed me she didn't care as long as it was gone. So I reached out to the sheriff's department. I believe some of the deputies took some, a couple of the employees actually took some home. But it's all gone.
Anyone else?
Did Jeff King know that truck came with plow before he did?
I believe he did know that it had a plow, yes.
Anyone else?
Was Jeff's bid before it was advertised or after?
After.
I have one clarifying question. You mentioned in your testimony about the idea of changing from a stipend for employees to pooling money together to put some kind of exercise facilities in the town, right?
Yes.
You said that was brought up at a prior select board meeting. Do you know roughly when that was brought up at a prior select board meeting?
It was before this board. I believe Jessica and Aaron were still on the board, but it was in our general warrant. And something came up about what was $200 for. And they said, oh, that's health reimbursement. And the talk came up about it. And they just briefly mentioned, they said, the guys had talked about pooling money, put either a rowing machine or a treadmill in the garage. And is that something doable? Nothing was ever said. And but no concerns came of it either.
Do you have a rough idea of what year that was at least?
Would have been within the last year and a half.
But elected select board before the one sitting here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I tried to find the notes, but none of the notes were good with the computer, so.
Attorneys have any other follow-up after hearing that round of questioning?
I do not.
No.
Mr. Mashter, thank you. That concludes your testimony. Rich, do you have another witness?
I don't have any other witnesses.
Farron, you're all set?
Yes.
So I think we have a good handle on the documents, as long as I'm clear that both parties agree that all the documents that were submitted earlier today through emails, including Mr. Mashter's set that went to the select board chair, and then the town manager set that went from Karen Stackpole to my office. I don't feel we need to spend time going through and cataloging those, as long as everyone agrees that's the proper universe of records, and we can just make a list of them after the hearing. Is that okay with the attorneys?
Yeah, I do just want to indicate that I can't find, and maybe it's because they just haven't come through because they may have been voluminous. I'm not sure how many documents were sent by Mr. Mashter's counsel, but I just haven't seen them yet. They haven't come through.
Okay, we'll definitely get them to you. I'll make sure of that.
Thank you.
We've been, one thing I want to ask the attorneys just to make clear on, we've got the personnel policy document is one of your exhibits, I believe, correct?
That's correct.
It is.
Town exhibits. And so that's the personnel policy approved May 21st, 2018. Everyone agrees that's the proper personnel policy for this matter?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's it for evidence. Do the parties want to make closing statements?
I think very briefly, I can say that I think that we have provided testimony that does support the notion that that the discipline here was proper and appropriate. There were certainly discussions and directions that were given by the town manager that we believe were not followed. And maybe they weren't intentional, maybe they weren't, things that were purposefully done in flagrant violation of what the town manager had said, but there certainly was a disregard for her directives, and specifically with regard to initiatives that he put together. The last two that we just talked about in my final cross, those were done very specifically after he was already well on notice that he wasn't supposed to do anything like that without talking to Carrie. The fact that policies have subsequently had to be put in place further reinforces that. So we appreciate it. We do believe that the discipline should be sustained. Thank you for your time.
I would respectfully disagree very strongly. There are 3 instances that were referenced in Carrie's letter of March 4th that form the basis for her determination for this disciplinary action. None of those, if the select board looks at the 2021 performance evaluation, none of those are spelled out as anything that Alan needs to stop doing. It is please avoid initiating projects without permits, i.e. the Bay Park. Getting a donation of free exercise equipment is not a violation of that directive. It's not an initiative. It's not a town program. It's not something that Alan is putting in place that requires a permit or doesn't require a permit. It is an effort on his part to get something for the town employees that's going to benefit them. In hindsight, when she told him she didn't want that in place, he had it gone in 3 days. It is not anything that has cost the town money. I understand in hindsight, after she got an opinion from the League of Cities and Towns, that the League of Cities and Towns has expressed concern over possible issues. But it's nothing that was spelled out to Alan prior to him taking that equipment. It was done to benefit the town, to benefit the town employees. It was not in violation of her expectations that were set out in the June 2021 performance evaluation. The same thing with the salt barter. That was a one-time deal. That wasn't an initiative that Alan was putting in place for the town. It wasn't a program he was starting to benefit the Department of Public Works or somehow put into place an ongoing barter process. It was a one-time deal. Alan knew that this gentleman was a person who could do specific work that the town was going to need in the spring. In exchange, Alan gave him a certain amount of salt. Bottom line for that arrangement is the town benefited. It wasn't a huge benefit to the town, but it was a benefit of $90 to the town. Did Alan have noticed that barter arrangements should not be entered into? He did not. In fact, he has, since he's been here, he has entered into barter arrangements that the town has been aware of for the town's benefit. The barter arrangements with the city of St. Albans, so that the town can get its street sweeping done, so that the town can get its water systems cleared out, have benefited the town, have saved the town a lot of money. And everyone was aware of those arrangements as an ongoing situation. So Alan had no expectation that he was doing anything that was going to jeopardize the town when he entered into this arrangement. It was a benefit to the town. It wasn't anything that exposed the town to liability. Should he have had given Carrie a copy of this agreement sooner than 3 weeks afterwards? Perhaps. Alan is not sitting here today saying he couldn't improve his communication. They couldn't improve their communication together, but he's saying he is not, his conduct does not show a lack of candor or any type of insubordination. As far as the town bid process, where the truck was sold to Jeff, Alan followed the bid process that the town has used in the past. The one thing he left out was the inclusion of the plow. Maybe that would have resulted in a higher bid for the town, maybe not. You heard Jeff's testimony about the condition of that truck. I suspect that the fact that that truck was with or without a plow was not going to drive the price of that truck a lot higher if it had been advertised as coming with a plow. Town's disciplinary policy, it speaks to a progressive discipline process. There's a verbal warning process, there's a written warning process, there's a suspension, and there's a termination. And I understand there's also language, because it's written by attorneys, there's language in there that says we're not stuck having to follow that specifically. But in this case, Alan has not had a single disciplinary action against him. There's nothing in his file to reflect that Alan has been warned in the past about this conduct or any other conduct. So the idea that a week's suspension without pay is an appropriate disciplinary action for this conduct, which this board could certainly look at and say Alan did nothing wrong. I think that that type of discipline is extreme and it goes beyond what's contemplated in the town's policies.
Thank you.
We appreciate that you recognize the flexibility in the policies.
Okay. Thank you very much, attorneys. Thank you, Harry Johnson. Thank you, Alan Mashter. That concludes the hearing. So that finishes my work, and I can turn it back over to Jonathan for wrapping up this month.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.